Hey guys, it's Dr. Rob Franklin with Full Bucket. I'm here in Denver, Colorado at the American Association of Equine Practitioners annual convention, and I'm here with my partner, good friend, and colleague, Dr. Keith Ladson. Keith, it's great to be here in Denver, Mile High City. We are amongst the best equine veterinarians in the whole world at this event where we're exchanging information, we're learning about new technologies. And of course, Full Bucket's here, and we're here to talk about things that are important in equine veterinary science.
It seems like recently everybody's talking about the microbiome. We hear about it on commercials, on TV, we hear about it on internet landing pages, supplements, we hear about it in the news, we hear about it. I mean, it almost seems like it's becoming this blunted word that nobody really knows what it means or how we use it or how we apply it in our daily lives. We hear that we are supposed to be eating fiber and fruits and nuts and all of these things, but why? Why does that make a difference in our lives? Does it make it live longer? Does it make us feel better? And does that apply to horses and dogs and cats as well? And I think that's one of the things that you and I, over the course of, 6-7 years, the past 6 or 7 years, that we've been really talking about prebiotics, probiotics, all of the things that really contribute to gut health. We've learned how that really applies to us and how that applies to our patients, and we're just now starting to learn the extent of that.
The volume of knowledge is just ramped up just on a real hockey stick, right? And so everyone's talking about the microbiome, and so I guess the first thing is to say, well, what's the microbiome, and why there's this whole vernacular, which unfortunately, whenever things get invented or there's this discovery, there's also this new vernacular that develops, and it's quite confusing. And we talk about it with 30 years ago with the internet, and what is www, what is the web, the internet, the net. People didn't know how to refer to it, and they didn't know exactly what they're referring to or where it was or what it did. And I feel like we're there with the microbiome also. People are obviously in tune with probiotics and prebiotics, which when we started Full Bucket 12 years ago, people had no real clue as to how a probiotic really helped an animal. Now people are, they're pretty in tune with, I need to make sure my horse has probiotics, and that's an important part of its well-being and care. But now we're at this next level, and we've understood this thing called the microbiome. So let's just make this real simple. So the microbiome is everything that's happening in the intestinal tract. And it doesn't have to be the intestinal tract, because we can talk about the dermal microbiome or the ocular microbiome. But we're going to be talking about the intestinal microbiome. And so it's everything that's happening in that microbiome, from a who's who, so what bacteria, what protozoa, what fungi are operating in our intestinal tracts or the horse's intestinal tract. What genes do they have, and what do those genes and that genetic expression, what impact does that have on the animal itself? And then also, what are the sort of metabolic features? What's the byproduct? What's happening with all this stuff? These things aren't just in there inertly living. They're doing stuff. They're digesting food. They're signaling different parts of our immune system. They're dealing with pathogens. They're doing all this stuff. So the microbiome is really the broadest term that we can use to define everything that's going on from a microbial standpoint in the intestinal tract. And so I think if people just realize that and don't get too confused by words like microflora, microbiota, metabolome, those things are just going to make people start splitting hairs, and they don't need to do that. They need to start off and just realize there's a whole ecosystem that is very important for our health that is occurring in our digestive tract. There's also one occurring in our skin, on our eyes, everywhere that we are exposed. And the really fascinating part is that forever we've kind of felt like we were a person that had a few bugs in our intestinal tract, but we're mostly a person. Turns out that we're actually this crazy superorganism. And this is mind-blowing to me. We're a superorganism. We are more bacteria than we are ourselves. In terms of cells, there are more of them than us. So who's driving the ship? Who made who? Let's go back to AC/DC. Who made who? So, that this microbiome, it's so important that's why it's blown up. That's why researchers, the most cutting edge people at university levels, and even the practitioners out there, they're saying all this disease and all these processes, these autoimmune problems, and all these things that we couldn't figure out why they're happening. All of a sudden, we understand about this ecology that's there in our intestinal tracts, and this is what's governing what's happening all over the place. That is so cool.
That's pretty mind-blowing. To think that all of the systems that you and I as veterinarians and as specialists, as an internist and as a surgeon, that we've treated symptomatically over the years, whether it's inflammation or infection, diarrhea, any of those things, bloat, to think that those things could directly contribute or be contributed to by the microflora, by the microbiome, is mind-blowing. So the opportunities out there for the future are just endless, it seems, right now. And as we move forward and start to learn more about the microbiome and then dig deeper into the genetics of it, the world's our oyster, really.
Yeah, and I think a perfect analogy is the way that we have, in parallel, but in advance, we've discovered our genome. We've mapped out the human genome, we've mapped out the equine genome, so we know all the genes and what they do, right? And so now we're able to go back and we're able to see, look at these diseases, and these diseases are triggered by these genes, and some of these genes are sitting there, they're waiting to be turned on under certain situations, and those genes are what create all what we see in our lives, right? So whether it's color of our eyes or the way our body responds to different toxins or pathogens or anything, that's our genome. And so over the past 20 years, we've really mapped that out. And now, from a medical standpoint, we're able to tailor our therapies and our diagnostics towards, okay, we know these genes. Well, the same thing's happening now with the microbiome. So now we're able to look at and say, here's all these disease states, here's all these problems that horses get, dogs get, people get, and here's what typically happens in the microbiome, and here's the genes that are turned on and turned off, and this is how it all. So it's like we've all of a sudden been handed this map that before we were driving without a clue if the world was round, if there were multiple continents. We have the map now. And now we're able to start to be able to say, okay, we're seeing this problem. And look at this. These horses that are, these mares that colic right around foaling time. Oh my gosh, did you know that the reason that these mares are colicking right around foaling time is that their microbiome is disrupted? Because we're doing what? We're changing their feed, we're creating this environmental stress, we're doing all these things, and that changed their microbiome, and boom, they colic. And forever we've gone, I don't know, it just seems like these mares, right around foaling time, they're predisposed to flipping their colon.
Sure.
And it turns out there's a reason for it. So we have been, like the lens has been lifted, the map's been handed over, here it goes. And man, it's so exciting.
Yeah, I think of the things that you and I have encountered in our careers over the past 20 years of being veterinarians that really were earth-shaking for us, earthquake developments. Mm-hmm. For me, it would be locking plates in orthopedics where the screws lock into the plate. They screw into the plate themselves and the bones. That created something that allowed us to do things in orthopedics that we never could have imagined. I'm sure in internal medicine you have similar things, but this is something that applies across all horses, across all animals, across all cases, and I think the opportunity to really harness that as we go forward in the future is exciting.
Yeah.